Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, beautiful friends. We're so grateful to be with you again for Unveiling the Beloved, installment number 8, volume 8, episode 8, whatever it is, our 8th Unveiling the Beloved. And Khabir and I have been focusing on a theme for this one of reflections and mirrors and like moving through understanding and traversing levels of consciousness. So we're very happy to be with you again. We'll start our time with the invocation. And Khabir, would you like to start us in the German and then I'll take the microphone back for the English.
Dem einen entgegen, der Vollkommenheit, der Liebe, der Harmonie und der Schönheit, dem einzig Seienden, vereint mit all den erleuchteten Seelen, die den Meister, den Geist der Führung verkörpern. Amen.
Toward the One, the perfection of love, harmony and beauty, the only being, united with all the illuminated souls who form the embodiment of the Master, the Spirit of Guidance. Amen. So we're going to start with, we've already started with announcements and invocations, and we'll continue on with some music. So we'll visit what is called the Carving Bismillah, and this is a melody from Amita Harvey. And the motif is of a reflected, mirrored heart. And it was designed originally as a seated zikr. So if you're sitting on your butts, you're in exactly the right position to do this. It can be done standing up as well. So the idea is that you start with the image, the shape of a heart, like this. And you don't have to do it with your hands. I'm just showing you. In case you don't know the classic shape for a heart, it's like this. And so when we sing Bismillah, we always start with a bow into the center of our own physical heart. That's the beginning point that we want to initiate everything from, acknowledging that God is at the center, at the heart of everything that unfolds in creation. And then when we sing Irrahman, Irrahim, the first time we do that, we're imagining the shape of the heart. We've started down in the depths of the heart, and then we draw the heart up, our own physical heart, up around the shape of a heart, around the curve, and back down into the center. So it's like this part of the heart. We're tracing this shape with our own heart on Irrahman, Irrahim. When we sing Bismillah again, we go back down into the depth of the heart with a bow, and then bring our own physical heart up along the left side of the heart, up around the curve and back down into the center of our own beings. Then, because we want to acknowledge that everything that is happening on this plane of existence is also happening in the divine celestial realms, and everything that is God is reflected in humanity, in manifest existence, and everything that happens in manifest existence is reflected back to God. So we invert this image of a heart, and the third time we bow down into the heart with a Bismillah. We then come up along the right side of the heart, so scooping down further around and then up to a point with our own physical heart. Fourth time we'll sing Bismillah, bowing down, and then coming down onto the left side, down around and bringing our own heart up to a point. There's a little bit of a pause at the very end. There's a note that drops in the melody. And that note is an invitation to just rest in the perfection of our own beings before we begin a Bismillah again. Okay, so there's your explanation, but once we start moving, it probably doesn't look anything like that, so hopefully you can just follow your own great guidance and attune to your own heart, the heart of God that is reflected within your being, and impressing that image and that ideal into every cell of your own body and offering it back as a prayer. Bismillah, Irrahman, Irrahim. Bismillah, Irrahman, Irrahim. Bismillah, Irrahman, Irrahim. Bismillah. So these themes of reflection, of mirroring, show up in the Sufi path in so many different ways, and it can be confusing, and maybe that's part of the point, is to be confusing. The Sufi path likes its own version of koans, where the point is to boggle the mind until we let go of the mind and rest in the true being, in the true nature of ourselves. And there are so many aspects about this path that are about recognizing that all of our perceptions, our outer perceptions and engagements in the world and our identifications are imaginary, that there is a mirage of life experience unfolding, that the experience does unfold, but it is not eternal. It is not real, in a capital R, real. And so it is our task on the spiritual path to try to cut through the illusions. And in the Sufi way of describing those things, it is sometimes referred to as polishing the mirror of the heart. And that idea is, it's not about a literal mirror. It's not about a specific, tangible, literal reflecting pool, but it's saying that the heart in itself, the heart in the center of each and every being is perfect and clear and is the embodiment of the divine, is the essence of God. And everything that is bounced into that mirror gives the impression of being true. And we are so gullible in our humanness. We are so susceptible to believing our experience that anything that is bounced into the mirror of our hearts, we start to believe that that's who we are and that's what is true. And so the spiritual path starts with a desire not to believe that, a desire to recognize that that is not the ultimate reality, and then to try to clear that veil of illusions, of false conceptions. And ideally, we can do that by attuning to love, by attuning to our ideal, to what is precious and beautiful and important to us, and focusing entirely on that so that we're not paying any attention to the conglomeration, to the amalgam of impressions that land in the heart. So I've brought lots of stories and readings and teachings, mostly from Piro Murshid Inayat Khan, because he's my personal hero on the Sufi path. And I'll share a couple of those short ones with you right now. One of them is from a collection of poetry that is called Hindustani lyrics. And what, Khabir? Are you familiar with the Hindustani lyrics? It's a tiny little volume. It's like I'm showing. It's like this big, and it's like this thick and this big. Very small Hindustani lyrics. And here's a very short passage from one of these beautiful mystical poems. Oh, burnish well the mirror of thy heart, and make it fair. If thou desire the image of thy love to shine reflected there. Here it is again. Oh, burnish well the mirror of thy heart, and make it fair. If thou desire the image of thy love to shine reflected there. So do you know the word burnishing? That it's kind of an unusual word. We don't use it much, even in English. So if English is not your first language. So to burnish is to polish something, but there's an idea about it that is taking an effortful approach to whatever it is that is rough and buffing it until it shines. So you just rub it and rub it and rub it until it shines. And I have a very visceral association in I refer everything back to myself because I'm an egotist. No, because I'm a human being. And so my understanding of things comes from my own experience. So I love pottery. I do pottery. I make things on a wheel with clay and mud. And I love getting muddy. And when you burnish something on a potter's wheel, it means that you have some rough clay and you take something hard to it that might be like a wooden knife, or it might be a metal rib, or kind of like a smooth edged knife, but you don't actually cut it. You just apply a gentle, consistent pressure until all of the rough edges are worn smooth. And really, literally, it's a lump of mud, but it shines. It gets smooth and hard enough that it reflects light, which I think is pretty remarkable. So burnishing the heart so that the reflection of that which you love shines out from your own heart. That is the path and the purpose of our spiritual practices. That is about emptying the self, noticing, being willing to address directly the aspects of ourselves that are rough and unrefined, and to smooth them so that there is a pure, clean, still surface, so that everything that comes in can be reflected back to the beloved. Sweet, huh? All right, here's one more before we pass the microphone to Khabir. Okay, so this is from volume 2. and it is the mysticism of music, sound, and word. I can send these things to you later if you want them. And this is from chapter 7. The topic is music, but it's a very small excerpt from this section. The Sufi visualizes the object of devotion in one's mind, which is reflected upon the mirror of one's soul. The heart, the factor of feeling, is possessed by everyone, although with everyone it is not a living heart. This heart is made alive by the Sufi, who gives an outlet to intense feelings in tears and sighs. By so doing, the clouds of Jalal, of power, of might, the clouds of Jalal, which gathers with the psychic development, fall in tears as drops of rain, and the sky of one's heart is clear, allowing the soul to shine. This condition is regarded by Sufis as the sacred ecstasy. Would you like to hear any of that again? The Sufi visualizes the object of devotion in one's mind, which is reflected upon the mirror of the soul. You visualize the object of your devotion, of what you love, with your mind, and then it is reflected in your soul. Pretty good, huh? Okay. The heart, the factor of feeling, is possessed by everyone, although with everyone it is not a living heart. This heart is made alive by the Sufi, who gives an outlet to intense feelings in tears and in sighs. We feel everything we feel, and we express it, we acknowledge it and experience it fully. By so doing, the clouds of Jalal, the power which gathers with this psychic development, fall in tears of drops of rain, and the sky of the heart is clear, allowing the soul to shine. This condition is regarded by Sufis as the sacred ecstasy, which is our daily assignment, friends. Daily ecstasy, the assignment of all Sufis. Okay, on to Khabir.
Thank you so much, Sára. Yes, mirroring and the different realms of our consciousness and of what we see or what we think we see. And for me, it's always like the way is turning to the stories. And so when we were talking about unveiling number 8, I was looking for stories that show a path to another world, that open a veil into our consciousness in what way ever. And there are just many different approaches to do that, even in stories. So the first one is a story from Scotland. So I don't know if anybody of you has like Scottish ancestors. If so, there is like a feast that is called Cayley. It's a traditional feast that they are celebrating. And if you're invited to a Cayley, you better bring a story or a song, because everybody has to tell a story or sing a song at a Cayley. And it's a saying that goes, tell us a story, sing us a song, show us your bum or out you've gone. So if you don't have a story or a song to sing, you have to drop your pants. And if you're not willing to do that, you have to leave. So it's up to you, if you're invited to a Cayley, to be prepared. So this special story is about a young boy. His name is Jimmy. And Jimmy, he was working at a farm, and the farm was set upon a little hill. And when you look down the hill, you could see a lake, like in the Scottish Highlands. And he was working on that farm. And one day, the farmer, his lord, invited to a Kaylee. So all the neighbors and family, and they came to celebrate, and they all sang and told stories. And then the Lord recognized that Jimmy hasn't told a story yet. So he approached him and said, Jimmy, what's about a story? And he said, I'm not a storyteller. So then sing us a song. Well, I'm not able to tell a story. I'm not able to sing a song. I'm really sorry. So the Lord says, so show us your bum. And he says, nope, no way. I'm not showing my bum to anybody. So the Lord grabs him by his belt and by his collar and throws him out of the door. There he was in the yard. What should he do? Well, he had a few whiskeys, as it is on such a feast, such a Kaylee, and so he walked to the fence of the yard, and he was looking down the hill to the lake, to the shore of the lake, and he saw a boat there, like he has never seen a boat before. It was like very thin and white, and had a very long sail, very soft, white, nearly not visible. So he was curious, and he was walking down the hill, and then he was approaching the boat, and he came closer and closer and closer. And then he thought, I maybe take a look inside the boat. And so he was leaning over the side of the boat to look inside, and he slipped in the mud from the shore. And so he gave the boat a motion, and the boat was like moving onto the lake, and he was falling into the boat. He was like hurting his head, and he fainted. So he was lying in that boat, and the boat was moving onto the lake. So in the middle of the night, he woke up, and the moon was in the sky, and he was like, oh, feeling his head, and he was feeling a big bump on his head. And he wanted to look at that bump, and so he was leaning over the side of the boat to see on the surface, the mirror of the lake, to see his face there. But when he did that, he didn't see the face that he was used to see. He saw the face of a young girl with like blonde, long hair. And he was like touching his hair and seeing the long blonde hair. Then he was like touching his breast, and yes, he had a breast. And then his hand moved further down, and it was like, and he fainted again. So he was lying in that boat again, and the boat was like, going up and down on that lake. And well, the next morning he woke up, and things were as they were. So he started to grab I don't know the English word, the ruder, to move the boat. And so, and he came to a shore. And now Jimmy, an oar, thanks. So Jimmy, he grew up on that lake, so he knew every inch of the shore. But that piece of shore he had never seen before. So he tried to get to that shore, and he finally managed to do it. And he was looking up the hill, and on the hill there was like a farm. And in that farm, at the same moment, lived a young farmer. And he was looking down to the lake, to the shore of the lake, and he saw a white boat that he'd never seen before. And in that boat, a beautiful young lady. And he was thinking of, okay, I guess I should go down and help her to save the boat, like to put it on the beach. And so he went down there, and Jimmy, seeing that young guy coming next to him, he was like, he didn't say a word. But the farmer, he asked him if he needed help, And the young lady nodded with her head. And so he helped her with the boat. Then he asked her if she might like to have something to drink and to eat. And again, the young lady nodded with her head. And so he invited her to his farm. And, well, Jimmy, this is the point where I have to talk about her and not him any longer. Because, you know, she was now in that farmer's house. And he offered her a bed for the night because he saw that she was tired. And so he went to his room, and she had that little bed in that other room. And in the next morning, the young lady woke up and she did what she was used to do, helping on a farm, you know. And so she helped here and she helped there. And the young farmer, he was like, very, look at her, she knows what she's doing. And so both of them, you know, they found their way along with each other. And, well, the days passed and she started speaking, and the weeks passed, and they really had a good time with each other, and they really got along very well with each other. And months passed. And then one day the farmer, he fell in love with the young lady, and he asked her if she would like to marry him. And she said, yes, I would very much like to marry you. And so they did. And they had like 3 beautiful sons and 3 beautiful daughters. And when the middle son turned 14, they invited their friends and neighbors to a ceilidh. And they drank a lot of whiskey. And then something happened that should never happen during a ceilidh. They ran out of whiskey. And so, you know, the farmer, he said, well, I'm going to the boat and get another barrel. And his wife said, no, let me do this. Just listen to the story that somebody's telling right now. I will go down to the boat and get a barrel out of the boat. And so she went down to the shore of the lake and she bent over into the boat to get a barrel of whiskey out of the boat. And she slipped in the mud of the beach. And she gave a push to the boat. And she fell into the boat and hurts her head and faints. And the boat is moving to the lake. And in the middle of the night, she wakes up and feels a bump on her head. It's going like, ooh. And she wants to see how big the bump on her head is. And she leans over the side of the boat and looks in the mirror of the lake. And she sees a face that she had forgotten. And now all the memories came back. There they were. And Jimmy was touching his head and his hair was back. His breasts were gone, but something else came back. So, you know, he took the oars, and I hope I spell it right or pronounce it right. And, you know, he tries to get as fast as he can back to that farm that he left so long ago. And he finally manages to get there. And he runs up the hill and he opens the door of the farm. And guess what? It's the morning of the ceilidh that he left so many, many years ago. And he enters the room and is like, oh, you would not believe what happened to me. Now I have a story to tell you. And everybody's like, oh, come on. Not now. It's early morning and we all do want to go home. Come on. No. And he's like, no, but you have to listen to me. Listen to what happened to me. Well, nobody wanted to listen. But anyway, you know, Jimmy, he became like a very, very famous storyteller in Scotland. And he was traveling around the country and and was sharing his stories and his story. And now and then he returned to that lake where everything began. And if you would walk around that lake, you would maybe meet him sitting on a bench. And if you would sit next to him, he probably would tell you a story. And then he would be silent for a moment. And in these moments of silence, tears run down his cheek. And well, I asked him why he's crying. And he was saying, well, every time I'm here on that lake, I have to think about my family that I have to leave behind so many years ago. Now, when I was telling me the story again and again, this song came up. Time, thou art the ocean, every movement of life is thy wave. Time, thou art the ocean, every movement of life is thy wave. Allahu, Allah, Allah, Allahu, 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 Allah, Allah, Allahu, Allahu. Time, thou art the ocean, every movement of life is thy wave. Time, thou art the ocean, every movement of life is thy wave. Allahu, Allah, Allah, Allahu, 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 Allah, Allah, Allahu, Allahu. Time, thou art the ocean, every movement of life is thy wave. Time, thou art the ocean, every movement of life is thy wave. Allahu, Allah, Allah, Allahu, 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 Allah, Allah, Allahu, Allahu. Time, thou art the ocean, every movement of life is thy wave. Time, thou art the ocean, every movement of life is thy wave. Allahu, Allah, Allah, Allahu, 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 Allah, Allah, Allahu, 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 Allah, Allah, Allahu, Allah, Allah, Allahu, Allahu. So I guess the question is, what is the real experience? And I guess I'll leave you with that question. Sára.
You're welcome to leave us with the question, but please don't leave us. Okay, friends. Oh, Khabir, I love you so much. I'm so grateful for you. I love your stories and your music and your weaving together all this yumminess. So good. Okay. Back to Murshid. Are you ready? As if we ever left Murshid. So here's a passage from Volume 4 on mental purification and healing. And I know his voice. It's amazing. I know. That's about you, Khabir. Khabir's voice. Okay, so this is in a whole series of teachings on the mind world. And this is from chapter 7. You don't have to remember all these things. I just tell you because I think some of you are like nerdy enough that you want all the details of where these come from. Okay. A clear vision depends upon a clear heart, open to reflection. Jalaluddin Rumi begins his Masnavi by speaking about the mirror quality of the heart. Also, by telling that this mirror quality sometimes disappears when a kind of rust covers the heart. And then he goes on to tell us that by purifying the heart from this rust, one makes this mirror of the heart clear, clear to receive reflections. Speaking about the science of telepathy, that's like mind reading, my Murshid once said, "It is reflection. If your heart is clear, then you must only know how to focus it, and you need not do anything else. It is a mirror, and all that is before it will be reflected in it." Are you good so far? There's a little more. But now the question is, what is the rust? What is it made of? The rust is made of the dense outcome of the mind itself. It is its dense part which comes to the surface and thereby covers it, covering at the same time its mirror quality. The heart becomes covered by confusion, fear, depression, by all manner of excitement that disturbs the rhythm of its mechanism. Do you get it? So in lots of places in Murshid's teachings, he refers to the mind and the heart as being one and the same thing, but we relate to them very differently, the mind and the heart. And he describes the mind as being the surface of the heart, and the heart is the depth of the mind. The heart and the mind are all part of what we identify with as ourselves, what we think are our being. I have a much longer reading I might share with you a little bit later, but I'll give you a little piece of it right now that is about how the soul comes into existence, comes into manifest existence, that the soul inherently is God. And this pervades lots of different spiritual paths and beliefs and cosmologies, that God is the soul is God, and the individual soul, which is each of us, is a little piece of God that has just rayed forth, like radiated, expressed, shined, beamed forth into a specific, unique manifestation. That does not make it separate from God, but it makes it discernible in its own unique being. Does that make sense? Are you with me so far? All right, so when the soul goes raying forth into its unique individuated existence, it has to form an identity. It has to relate to its surroundings, its conditions. And so it first identifies itself with its own physical body, with the physical vehicle that the soul now is riding around in. We go, oh, I am my body. Murshid describes it like if you ask any child, what are you or who are you, the child will point to its own body and go, I'm me. This is me. This physical body is me. That's the natural immediate association that the soul gloms onto. Then it expands out and starts relating to everything else in the context of me, of the physical body, of the personal identity, me. So then everything becomes relational. So this is my wife. This is my friend. This is my mom. That my mom isn't here right now, but that's like the journey of the soul going, this is my. And there's like my table, my coffee, my phone, my keys, my. That's natural evolution of every soul. There's a confusion in that because it relates everything to the physical self-referencing. Very natural, but is not essentially the reality. So that's fine. We do that. We go from the physical body of I am my body into, oh wait, I also have thoughts. Am I my thoughts? Probably so. Or at least the thoughts are part of who I am. And then we do the same thing with our feelings. These are my emotions. This is my sensation experience. That's who I am. Then the collection of all of those things, my physical body, my thoughts, my beliefs, the activity of my mind, and the emotions, my sensory experience and my intuition and my feelings, all of those things together make up who I am. And that is what Murshid calls the ego. All those things together are the ego. There's nothing wrong with that. That's very healthy and natural, and every manifest being needs to have a healthy sense of ego. We don't try to destroy the ego or deny it or pretend like it doesn't exist. We're not trying to get rid of it. We're trying to see it for what it really is. And part of that means being able to see body, thought, feeling, all those things make up my experience, but they are not my nature. They are not the essence of who I am. Then who is the I? If I am not my body, I am not my thoughts, I am not my feelings, then what am I? That's where we start getting very tricky. As if any of this wasn't already tricky. We're already being tricky. But once we start seeing through those false attachments and false identities, then we start wanting to clear the impressions. And to the extent that we can clear the impressions, we can see truth. We can see and experience reality as it is. We can be the clear, still water that can reflect things accurately. Are you with me? I can only see a couple of you, but I like seeing the heads nodding. Or sometimes I can see the head just like tip sideways, like, huh? Huh? All right. So we want to approach these things, the burnishing and the polishing and the disconnecting from those fierce associations, with as much beauty and love as possible. That we go, yeah, I know that that's not who I am, and I don't want to dismiss or ignore or insult or develop negative associations with those thoughts, feelings, beliefs, and experiences. We just want to put them in the right context so that I have more freedom, so that I have access to more energy, more capacity, more power, more insight, more wisdom, more peace, more happiness, more contentment with my own experience. So that's where we go into the zikr phrase. In our Sufi practices, we do a lot of La ilaha illallah. Then the La ilaha is the part that is saying, I am not that, I am not that, I am not that, I am not that. God is not that, God is not that, God is not that. And then we come back to illallah. God is the essence and the indwelling presence within all of those things. Once we move through and discern beyond all of the outer facades, then we get to the heart essence of what God truly is, always has been. So, one of the most enticing and lovely, gentle, enjoyable ways that we can do these practices is through music. Yay, music. So, we're going to do now what is called, we have a theme today, another theme. Maybe we could call it a subplot of Amita Harvey melodies. The next one is also a composition from our friend Amita. And it's called the knocking zikr. And it means that we recognize that our hearts, like this clear, beautiful, perfect mirror of the divine, has accumulated some rust and dust along the way. The rust and dust of what Murshid described as fears, depressions, pain, reactivity, false associations, all of these coping mechanisms and scar tissue that I refer to it as scar tissue, that we accumulate through our life experience. And we want to clear that. And we want to clear that by remembering the constant eternal presence of God, which is our nature. So we'll sing La ilaha illallahu. And if you wish to do this, we don't have a group of people to do that with. I don't see anybody with a big group of a circle of 100 people over there in Zoom land. But the idea is that when we say La, that's the no. That means no, literally in Arabic. La means no. We say La, the hands drop, and then they come up and knock on the heart. And there's a pause for you to do that. La ilaha. And then we'll do a sweep that's illallahu. Normally we would do this with both hands coming up, but it's just like sweeping the rust and dust off the heart. So whatever gesture feels useful for you of just sweeping away. First you knock it free and then you sweep it away. So, I started on a different key. Sorry about that. We're going to go here. La ilaha Rasulullah, Rasulullah, Muhammad, Rasulullah. I didn't tell you about that part. We'll also sing Muhammad Rasulullah. Muhammad was the messenger of God, and there's you can refer to that and think about that as the proper noun, Muhammad, as the prophet, peace be upon him. But you can also think about it as the embodiment of the perfected human being that is really the ideal that Muhammad represents. That is, what is it that we are truly capable of if we are in our highest self, attuned to God, and putting that ideal in charge of our engagement in everyday life? Rasulullah, Rasul is the part that means messenger, Allah of God. And in a very real way, each of us carries a responsibility and a possibility of being that living embodiment, carrying the message of God and shining that light of love and eternal presence into the world. Muhammad Rasulullah, Muhammad Rasulullah. There are innumerable Sufi teachings that focus on this quality of the heart and on discovering what it is that we can truly love so entirely so that we are willing to let go of our attachments and associations with all of these false notions of self. And we're not talking about codependent, unhealthy, dysfunctional relationships. We're talking about the true essence of devotion and being willing and wanting and longing to focus entirely on the real, capital R, real. Being willing to see that eternal living presence within the object of our devotion so that we can let go of these false entanglements that keep us feeling ensnared and limited. In our Sufi path, especially in the Sufi Ruhaniyat, not all Sufi paths, but particularly in the Sufi Ruhaniyat, there is an understanding that anything that we are willing to let go of, it's because we have discovered a greater love. It's never because we are forced to or because we are instructed in the name of suffering or and some ideal of renunciation or asceticism. No, it's always about love. Love, 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 love. If you aren't sure where to put your devotion and your super enthusiastic, wholehearted being of love, I highly recommend Khabir. You just point toward Khabir. Speaking of which.
Thank you so much. Well, and the next story is about exactly that journey to fall in love. But what are the first steps on that journey? It's the wish to fall in love or the wish to discover. And then we come to the point that we maybe need somebody to help us along that path. And we're maybe looking for a guide, someone to help us along. And then there's the question of, where does that wish come from? You know, is that wish already based in love? Or is it, again, one of these, I'm doing what I think I have to do or should do, or I don't know. So the next story is in this beautiful book, Heart, Soul, and Self. Heart, Self, and Soul. And chapter 8 is dropping the veil, just to mention. I mean, could be interesting for you coming to this here, Unveiling the Beloved. But so this story I'm going to read to you now because I don't want to miss a word on it. Mehmed, a young dervish, had a close friend named Hassan. Hassan said to Mehmed, "Would you please ask your sheikh if he might become a dervish too, if I might become a dervish too?" So Mehmed went to his sheikh and said, "I have a good friend named Hassan. He is honest and hardworking, and he asked me to ask you if he could become a dervish." The sheikh made no reply. A sheikh will often remain silent rather than speak negatively or give answers or solutions that a dervish should figure out for himself. This is just a side note. Eventually, after Mehmed had approached his sheikh for the third time, the sheikh said, "Let your friend come and serve in our lodge, and we We will see if he's ready to become a dervish. Hassan was kept busy sweeping and cleaning up the kitchen. He could hear the dervishes chanting and praying and listen to them chatting and joking at meals. After some time, Mehmed asked the sheikh again about his friend. The sheikh said, "Let him serve me a glass of water next week during our next festival. If he can serve me successfully in front of the distinguished crowd, that will be a sign that he is ready." On the day of the festival, Hassan kept busy in the kitchen as he waited anxiously to be called. After the meal, the sheikh began with the glass of water on a tray and kneeled before the sheikh. The sheikh was telling an involved story, and as he gestured to make a point, he knocked over the glass. Hassan was so mortified that he shut his eyes in horror. When he opened them, Hassan found himself at the edge of a cliff in a forest. He made his way through the woods and came to a town. There were wonderful smells coming from a restaurant, and Hassan realized that he was very hungry. Although he knew he wasn't carrying his wallet, Hassan decided to order a nice hot meal. After dessert and coffee, a well-dressed man came up to his table. "I hope you enjoyed your meal," he said. "Oh yes, everything was delicious. Are you the owner?" asked Hassan, pretending to search for his wallet. "Yes," replied the man, "and I am delighted that you enjoyed our humble cooking." "I can't find my wallet," Hassan exclaimed. "I must have dropped it. How can I pay you?" "You must be new around here." "I don't need any payment, but I would very much appreciate it if you would say a prayer for the souls of my parents who passed away recently." Hassan made an eloquent prayer for the souls of his host's parents. The restaurant owner thanked Hassan profusely and insisted that he come back tomorrow for another meal. Bemused, Hassan left, feeling full and content. The evening was cool, and as he passed a tailor's shop, he stopped to admire a beautiful coat. Just then a young man came out of the shop. "Do you like the coat?" he asked. "It is beautiful," replied Hassan, "and I love the workmanship on the embroidery." "Thank you," said the young man. "It is yours." Hassan tried to refuse, but the tailor insisted. "You are not from around here, are you?" asked the tailor. "Do you have a place to stay?" Hassan admitted that he did not. "Well, then you can do me a favor. I need someone to stay in the apartment above my store and mind the shop in case of fire or some other emergency." Hassan sat in his new apartment with his new coat, his stomach filled with delicious food. He thought that he must be in heaven, as all his wants and needs were so miraculously taken care of. Just then, he heard dozens of soft voices outside. He looked out and saw that the street was filled with women chatting and calling out to friends. As Hassan looked out, his eyes fell on the most beautiful woman he had ever seen. Hassan could not sleep all night. The next morning, when the tailor came to open the shop, Hassan explained his experience of the night before. "Thursday night," the tailor explained, "is Our Lady's night. The women of the town spend the evening together, and the men all stay at home. Many men have first seen their wives to be on such evenings. When this happens, our custom is that the young man goes outside on a Thursday evening carrying a lighted candle. He presents it to the young woman of his choice, and if she accepts the candle, it means that she accepts his proposal. On the following Thursday evening, Hassan offered a candle to the beautiful woman who had captured his heart. She took it from his shaking hands and smiled at him. Not knowing what more to do, Hassan rushed back to his apartment. The following morning, Hassan was summoned to the magistrate's office. He was in panic. Was it the free meals at the restaurant, the coat, the apartment, or the candle? The magistrate was a stern-looking, distinguished gentleman whose gaze pierced Hassan to his core. To Hassan's shock, the magistrate smiled and said, "It appears that my daughter has accepted your proposal." The magistrate went on, "Her dowry includes a house and enough money for servants and for you to make investments to support yourself. However, before you marry my daughter, you must promise to meet 3 conditions." Hassan was willing to promise anything to gain the hand of his beloved. He said, "Yes, of course. What are the conditions?" "You must promise to guard your tongue, your hands, and your genitals. Do you promise?" "Yes, I promise." And so Hassan was married. He felt he must be the happiest man alive to be married to the woman he loved and living the life of a wealthy man. One morning, as Hassan and his wife slept late, there was a knock at the door. Instantly, Hassan remembered that he had promised to see some people about an investment. He said to his wife, "Dear, I made a business appointment, but I don't want to bother with it just now. Would you please tell the men at the door that I have gone out already and that I'll see them this afternoon?" His wife, amazed, said, "What? What do you want me to tell these men?" Somewhat impatiently, Hassan repeated, "Tell them I've gone out and that I'll see them this afternoon." His wife, obviously upset, quickly dressed and rushed out of the room. After some time had gone by and she did not come back, Hassan went out to look for her. He thought that she might be visiting her father, so he went to his father-in-law's house. The magistrate said angrily, "You did not keep your first promise. Worse, you not only had no concern for your own tongue, but you even asked my daughter to lie for you. This is unforgivable." Hassan begged and pleaded and promised that it would never happen again. His father-in-law relented and Hassan's wife agreed to return. Soon everything was back to normal. Some weeks later, Hassan and his wife took a basket of food and went out for a picnic. While his wife rested, Hassan took a walk and passed by a fruit orchard. A peach had just dropped down onto a bush growing outside the orchard wall. It was ripe and looked absolutely delicious. Hassan thought that it would make a perfect dessert. He brought the peach back to his wife and asked her to cut it up. "Did someone give it to you, or did you buy it?" she asked. Hassan replied, "No, I found it on the road. It had fallen down and I picked it up." "You mean that no one gave the peach or sold the peach to you? You just took it. Yes, it was lying out in the open, right on the path. The wife began to cry and ran off through the woods. When Hassan returned home, no one had seen her come back. Some hours later, he reluctantly went to see his father-in-law. The magistrate was even more stern than before. You broke your second promise. You failed to guard your hands. But the peach was lying along a public pathway, argued Hassan. It doesn't matter. You did not grow the peach. You did not buy it. And you did not receive it as a gift. It was not yours to take. Again, Hassan begged forgiveness. He promised that he would never again make such a mistake, and eventually his wife agreed to return home. After some months, Hassan noticed that the younger women of the town gathered at the river every Tuesday to do their washing. Although his wife was very beautiful, he had grown accustomed to her looks. These young women were each lovely and charming in their own ways. Hassan began to make a habit of walking by this section of the river every Tuesday, and each week he paused longer and longer to admire the young beautiful bodies. One Tuesday, as Hassan crouched behind a bush to peer at the young women, he was grabbed from behind and lifted off his feet. A huge soldier marched him to his father-in-law's office. The magistrate looked coldly at Hassan. You have failed your third promise. Even if you did not act on your thoughts and feelings, in your mind you were unfaithful to my daughter. Then the magistrate turned to the soldier. Throw him back to where he came from. The soldier marched Hassan through the woods to the edge of the cliff and threw him over. In terror, Hassan squeezed his eyes shut. When he opened his eyes, he was back in front of the sheikh, still holding the tray with a glass of water. The sheikh leaned over and whispered to Hassan, You see, you are not ready yet. So, let's turn to some words for guidance. And call upon different qualities of guidance. The guidance that is within, and the guidance that is around us and meant for everybody, and the guidance that can be given to us by a teacher. Ya Mulhim, Ya Hadi, Ya Rashid are these three wazaif. And there is a beautiful noise in that exercise. You will recognize it. And it allows us to rest in these three wazaif. Ya Mulhim, Ya Hadi, Ya Rashid. 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 Allahu, 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 Allahu. Ya Mulhim, Ya Hadi, Ya Rashid. 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 Allahu, Allahu. Allahu, Allahu. Allahu, Allahu. Allahu, Allahu. Ya Mulhim, Ya Hadi, Ya Rashid. 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 Allahu, Allahu. Allahu, Allahu. Allahu, Allahu. Allahu, Allahu. Allahu, Allahu. Allahu, Allahu. Sára.
Oh, thank you, Khabir. I always just want to hang out in the echo of Khabir's voice forever. But there are more words to say. Are you ready, friends? I'm inclined to at least spend a couple minutes of our remaining time going super spiritual nerd face on you and describing to you the levels of consciousness that there are all of these systems in the Sufi realm that describe different aspects of our experience and stages along the journey and whatnot. Is that stuff interesting for you, friends? Nah. Okay, never mind. We'll just sing a lot. All right, I did see 1.5 people nodding, and then I see a bunch of other people nodding off. Just kidding. I don't see anybody nodding. Well, no, I don't see anyone nodding off. So, let's see. Best use of time. There's a little bit more from volume 2 that I would like to share with you that I was describing in my own paraphrasing way about the ways that our soul comes into existence and identifies with aspects of this world, and then ways that we need to try to untangle that. We don't need to, but we have the opportunity, and those of us who consciously choose to step onto a spiritual path, this is the process. This is what we're signing up for, because we recognize the value in it. Or for a lot of us, it's because we realize that the ways that we are naturally moving in the world are causing us a lot of suffering and a lot of pain. And we don't want to be in constant suffering and pain. And so we want to find higher perspectives and ideals that can help us feel more at ease in our own experience. So this comes back to volume 2. And it's a section called Cosmic Language, and the specific chapter is the ego. But I'm not going to share the whole thing with you because it's quite long, and I've already paraphrased 2/3 of it for you. So here's Murshid picking up where I feel like my paraphrasing left off. When the soul goes farther on the path of knowledge, it begins to find that, yes, there is a feeling of I-ness. But all that the soul identifies itself with is not itself. The day when this idea springs up in the heart, one has begun one's journey on the path of truth. Then, analyzing begins, and one begins to find out the being who is saying, I, in reality is separate. It is something that has taken even this body for its use. And one thinks, if it is not this body, which I can call I, then what else is there that I can call so? Even thought, imagination, or feeling is not the real I. We read in the 10th Sufi thought that perfection is achieved by the annihilation of the false ego. A person need not die for it. In order to annihilate this body, in order to annihilate the mind, a person has to analyze oneself and see, where does I stand? Does it stand as a remote, exclusive being? If it is a remote and exclusive being, then it must be found out. The whole spiritual process is to find this out. Are you with me so far? Uta, I can see you right now. I love your enthusiastic nod. Got it. Yes. Okay, next part. As in order to make the eyes, like the eyes, see themselves, one has to make a mirror to see the reflection of these eyes. So, in order to make this real being manifest, this body and mind have been made as a mirror. Do you get that? The body and mind is the mirror for the real I to be able to see itself. In this mirror, this real being may see itself and realize itself as being independent. You could think about that as the God consciousness. That God consciousness wants to perceive itself, and it cannot do that if it is a unified, one all-inclusive being. It has to have an extra, separate, physical, manifest, individuated form to be able to bounce itself back off of. Okay? What we have to achieve by the path of initiation, by the way of meditation, by spiritual knowledge, is to realize this by making ourselves a perfect mirror. Through the whole spiritual process, what we learn is to disillusion this false ego. Once it is disillusioned, once you realize that it's false, then the true ego realizes its own merit. It is in this realization that the soul enters the kingdom of God. It is in this realization that the soul is born again, a birth that opens the doors of heaven. And that doesn't mean after you die, it means right now. Yes, right now. In every possible instance of now. That when we realize that what we have identified as ourself, that is not real, it is not eternal, it is not the true nature of our being. And when we see through that, polishing, 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 then God, that perfect essence, is naturally reflected off of this perfect mirror that is our body, our mind, our worldly experience. And that is what helps us realize that this kingdom of heaven is all pervading, all around us. Then we have access to a consistent experience of equanimity, of peace, of love, of joy. Okay. Do you like it? What are we going to do about it? Then, what do we do about it? A couple of things. We grab hold of our own breath. We try to develop mastery over our own breath. That naturally happens in and out unconsciously by itself, but we have the capacity to grab hold of it and develop a masterful relationship with our own breath that creates more rhythm, more peace, more deliberate, active engagement with our own experience. We can shape our own experience. We can shape the quality of our thoughts and our feelings, and we can be less reactive and more active. Okay, here is your Sufi super nerd installment for today. You can find different systems of Sufi teachings, of Sufi cosmology that will describe different levels of consciousness that we naturally, without any effort at all, we naturally bop between these different levels of consciousness all the time. That doesn't mean that in this exact instant, like in the next 5 seconds, you're not going to experience each of these levels. But maybe you experienced the highest level of consciousness yesterday during a meditation, during an orgasm, during your morning cup of coffee, during your dream, during whatever it is, some aspect of your life where you might not even notice it, you might not be conscious of it, you might not strive for it, but it happens where you have the highest level of consciousness, which is called Hahut. It's H-A-H-U-T, Hahut. And you can hear in the word itself that it is spacious and vast, and it indicates the eternal, infinite unity of Godness, which is a capacity of our consciousness, but we don't spend a lot of time there because the world is fun, because there's so much to do here, because there are things to experience and thoughts to think and relationships to mess up or to have a good time with and do a good job with. I don't mean that we mess up, but all of these aspects of our lives keep pulling us and inviting us to experience them. And we do, and that's why we're here. So highest level of consciousness, Hahut, that is absolute unity, unified, realized existence, all-pervading God all the time. Okay. We can understand that by not understanding it at all. Like, it's not for our brains to comprehend. It's just the reality. Okay. Then we have, if we work our way a little bit further down, okay, but then what if you have, like, you know that everything is God, everything is unified existence, and you also have your own consciousness in that you have your own experience, and you can have an awareness of that. That level is called Lahut. Lahut. Malakut, that has this great capacity of consciousness and vast perspective, but it includes your own experience of awareness that is defined and described as peace and joy, of contentment. But there's some awareness within that. So not completely dissolved, but completely aware. Good? Okay, so I'm inclined to go opposite and go like, so there was the very highest, and then there's the next highest, and then there are three others that I'll describe to you. There are others in different systems, but I'm going to tell you three others, and I'm inclined to go backwards, like we did these two, and I'll tell you from the lowest on their way up toward the highest. Okay, so the first one is called Nasut. Nasut, Nasut. And that one is all about material existence. It is the most dense realm of just like, yep, there's a rock. Yep, there is like atomic level molecules and textures and physical body, bones, muscles, circulatory system, physical existence is Nasut. Okay, good with that? That's the easiest one to relate to. That's why we start with the breath of earth with those things. We're like, yep, there's no arguing with that. There's a rock. There's the ground. There's gravity. There's a tree. There's a bird. There's a naughty cat. There's a very nice wife. Physical level existence. Then we go into Malakut. Malakut. Malakut is the level of intelligence. That is your active mind. It is the conditions of this brain, of understanding things, of reasoning. And it includes aspects of sensory experience that are registered in the mind. So it includes your imagination, it includes the activity of thoughts that you're in control of and also that happen naturally. Malakut. Okay? Khabir, you're very studious, okay. The next one is called Jabarut. Jabarut. It's Jabarut, Jabarut. And Jabarut is the astral plane, or it is the aspect of spiritual power or dreams, of insight and intuition that happens and unfolds naturally, but it's not tied to the physical plane or specific sensations. So it is said that Jabarut is the level of being able to conceive of and create atmosphere, energy, experience that is the realm of visions and insight. Not tied to the physical plane, but you can experience it, access it, and utilize it in the physical plane. Does that make sense? Okay, so that's where it goes from there. So you have Nasut, physical, Malakut, mental, Jabarut, that is, you could think about it as a spiritual plane, awareness, consciousness, that then goes to Lahut, that is the spiritual, that is identified as peace and joy and contentment, not tied to the physical, but also not entirely dissolved in Hahut, the ultimate infinite reality. Okay. There's your Sufi nerding for today. I have 3 minutes left. We should sing something. And what are we going to sing? Love. We're going to sing love. This is a simple little ditty that is a composition of our friend Jessica Bromby. Oh, she's so amazing. And we'll sing, sorry for my tempestuous typing, Ishq Allah. And then we'll sing a whole lot of Mabudallah, 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 Mabudallah. So we're going to consider this a homeopathic dose of acknowledging that God is love and longs for love, and that is the nature of all of our beings, and that is what helps us access every plane of consciousness and our highest selves, free from personal attachment and delusional associations and clinging. Ishq Allah. Mabudallah, 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 Mabudallah. Ishq Allah. Mabudallah, 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 Mabudallah. Oh, my friend Khabir, it looks like he has dissolved into the one. He looks entirely frozen. Is that true for everybody or just for me? I see other people moving. Oh,
Ooh, it was.
oh, we lost him. I'm going to trust that he's going to come right back. And we have other things we can do. I have so many things for you today that we haven't gotten to. Okay, here's a fun little practice. Are you ready? So the Ishkala Mabudala. Do you like our paintings? We made those. So the Ishkala practice is so exquisite because nice, Radha, thank you. Because it focuses on the beloved, that we say Ishq Allah, that is God is the love, that is the inherent presence, the defining characteristic of God is love, Ishq Allah. And then Mabud Allah is the beloved, is God. And so we focus over and over and over again on the beloved. Nowhere in there do we say I. No, it's all God, and we're emphasizing the beloved. That is the object, the direction, the goal of our love that we are sending our love to all the time. So there's a very fun and silly little zikr practice where it's in English, and we'll say two phrases back to back. And one of them, oh my goodness, he's back. Hold on, where did he go? Okay. Adding a spotlight. Okay, Khabir, welcome back. Okay, we're gonna put a pause. Maybe we'll come back to that, but we're gonna go to Khabir while we have him. Go ahead, my friend. Oh yeah, come on.
I'm sorry. Techniques. Now my computer is updating. I have no idea why he's doing these things while I'm trying to tell stories. So there's one little last story I wanted to tell you guys. And sorry, this is via my mobile now. It looks a little bit strange, but okay, it's going to work somehow. And it's a story about a fool, as we have so many stories about fools. And maybe I should read the first
beatitude to you. Let's start with that one. And I give you the version from the King James Bible that says, "Blessed are the poor in spirit, for there is the kingdom of heaven. For theirs is the kingdom of heaven." Now, we'll come back to that later. The story is about a king's castle, and in front of the king's castle, there's a pear tree. And the pear tree has the most beautiful fruits every year, but the night before they want to harvest them, somebody comes and takes them all and steals them. So there is never a chance to harvest the ripe pears. So the king has 3 sons, the youngest of which is called Dummling, which is a German word. It's like stupid, and then you make it somehow a description of a person. So I don't know what an English equivalent would be, but it's maybe fool. But yeah, so the king anyway asked his eldest son to go out and watch the pear tree, and he does. And well, he sleeps or he stays under the tree for a whole year, and he sees like the little buds and the leaves getting green, and he sees the fruits ripen and all that. But then he falls asleep the night before the harvest of the pears. So the king sends his second son, and the same thing happens to his second son. He falls asleep in the night before the harvest. So the king finally asks his son, the stupid one, to go out and watch the pear tree, and he does. And he can manage to stay awake that last night. And he sees a white dove that comes and picks each and every pear and carries them away. And when this dove picks the last pear and takes it away, this boy follows this dove, and he sees how the dove is flying on a mountain top and then disappears into the mountain. So when the young guy climbs up that mountain and he looks around, there is suddenly a little gray man standing next to him. And the young boy says, "God bless you." And that little being says, "God blessed me with your words. Thank you for your kindness. Your luck is in the mountains. Just walk down the steps." And so this young man finds a gap in the rocks, and there are steps, and he walks down these steps. And when he arrives in the depth of the mountain, there he sees the dove, and the dove is like weaved into a spider's web. But when their eyes meet, the dove starts and rips the spider web apart. And when the last string was ripped apart, the dove turns into a beautiful young princess. So, and the two of them get married and reign their kingdom with wisdom. So it is said in the stories that those who we call fools or the stupid ones are the ones who are connected to their breath, and just connected to their breath. There is no interest in reaching out for something. There is no interest in, I want to be that or want to be that. It's just like being present in the moment, being present with what is, being present in the breath. And when you read Sadi's translations of the first beatitude, for me, it means exactly that. It's not that we are poor in spirit. It's just that we are simply in the breath, spirit and breath and soul and God. You remember the first part of this session, that our soul is God. So let's attune a little bit to that first beatitude. And I actually would have the lyrics for you, but they're disappeared in my computer. So you just listen. Tu Namaskani Baruch Dehoni Malkuta Dashmaya Tu Namaskani Baruch Dehoni Malkuta Dashmaya Tu Namaskani Baruch Dehoni Malkuta Nashmaya Tu Namaskani Baruch Dehoni Malkuta Nashmaya Tu Namaskani Baruch Dehoni Malkuta Nashmaya Tu Namaskani Baruch Dehoni Malkuta Dashmaya Tu Namaskani Baruch Dehoni Malkuta Nashmaya 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 Tu Namaskani Baruch Dehoni Malkuta Dashmaya 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 Tu Namaskani Baruch Dehoni Malkuta Dashmaya. Happy and aligned with the One are those who find their home in the breathing. To them belong the inner kingdom and queendom of heaven. Thank you.
Thank you, Khabir. Okay, friends, we just have a few moments left for this installment of Unveiling the Beloved. And I hope you all know that you are welcome to linger on the Zoom with us for another 15 minutes after that for our usual daily prayer Zoom. That will be 15 minutes of some prayer, breath practice, and a song. And I'm going to put the PayPal link in the chat window again for you. Well, for us, for you, for us. So if you would like to offer your financial generosities in appreciation for Khabir and I, and oh my gosh, sorry, we lost Khabir again. I hope he'll pop back in. You're welcome to do that. So in the next few minutes, I have a few more things to tell you. Oh, hold on just a moment. Sorry. Okay. So here's one final short reading from Piro Murshid Inayat Khan for today. And this is from volume 5 on spiritual liberty. And it's from a section called Love, Human and Divine. And this smaller subset is on the moral of love, a short excerpt for you. The pain of love becomes, in time, the life of the lover. The soreness of the wound of one's heart affords one a joy that nothing else can give. The heart, a flame, becomes the torch on the path of the lover, which lightens one's way that leads one to the destination. The pleasures of life are blinding. It is love alone that clears the rust from the heart, the mirror of the soul. So it is common for me in my way of teaching and sharing and trying to offer encouragements along the way to remind us, myself included, that we are not here to avoid suffering, that suffering is part of our life experience, and being loving absolutely will include suffering, that it will include loss and disappointment and pain of all sorts, and that is okay. In the Sufi way, that is okay. That in the Sufi book of life, Murshid Sadi talks about the path of Wadud, that is the infinitely loving. That is one of the beautiful names of God as the endlessly loving. And that the path of Wadud invites us into what Sadi refers to as divine masochism. That is, like, we know that we are signing up for some suffering. We know that we're signing up for some pain, but we are determined, and we know, we trust and believe that the quality of love and generosity and that constant flowing love from the heart is worth it. It's worthwhile, and that's the ideal that we are choosing in each moment. More and more love. Okay, so here's a very short little ditty that can help us stop cherishing and protecting the self so much and aiming toward love and the infinite vast perspectives that brings. Take me away from myself and be my being. Take me away from myself and be my being. Then shall you see everything through my eyes. Then shall you see everything through my eyes. Take me away from myself and be my being. Take me away from myself and be my being. Then shall you see everything through my eyes. Then shall you see everything through my eyes. Take me away from myself and be my being. Take me away from myself and be my being. Then shall you see everything through my eyes. Then shall you see everything through my eyes. The prayer Khatum is in the chat window for you. O thou, who art the perfection of love, harmony, and beauty, the Lord of heaven and earth, open our hearts that we may hear thy voice, which constantly cometh from within. Disclose to us thy divine light, which is hidden in our souls, that we may know and understand life better. Most merciful and compassionate God, give us thy great goodness. Teach us thy loving forgiveness. Raise us above the distinctions and differences which divide. Send us the peace of thy divine Spirit, and unite us all in thy perfect being. Amen.